important for us to understand that in large measure, we were not taught about those Africans who won in the battle against oppression and slavery. Now, Herbert Aptheker tells us in the book American Negro Slave Revolts, he tells us that there were over 250 documented revolts. In other words, back during that time, Europeans were very meticulous in documenting these things because they were trying to put things in place to make sure that these things never happened again, that revolts never occurred. So they documented whenever there was a revolt. Well, we know that there was Gaspar Yanga and Nanny of the Maroons down in Mexico. And we know about the Haitian Revolution, which we'll talk about a little bit later with Boukman Dutty and Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture. Probably the most well-known revolt that many of us have heard of would be that of Nat Turner, okay? The three most prominent revolts amongst Africans in America was Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and Gabriel Prosser. And then there was also the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina. But in large measure, we were never taught about those Africans who actually won their freedom and created sovereign Maroon communities. We love General Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser for the sacrifice that they made. Certainly, these are monumental Africans. But in the end, in their quest for liberation, they were killed. But you and I need to understand that there were those who were successful, who defeated their captors and went on to establish free, liberated, and sovereign communities and even nations. Okay. The other thing that the other myth that I want to put to rest and dispel is the notion that we didn't fight back. In my research, one of the things that I've come to understand is that we were always either planning a revolt, in the midst of a revolt, or coming out of a revolt. Remember, there are over 250 documented revolts in American history. That tells us it was at least one was happening per year. And so we were always either planning a revolt, in the midst of a revolt, or coming out of a revolt. We didn't just accept our enslavement and lay down and allow it to happen. Certainly there were those Africans who were terrorized into such a state of fear and compliance that they did, but overwhelmingly, we never accepted our captivity. We never accepted enslavement. We were always either planning a revolt, in the midst of a revolt, or coming out of a revolt. And so I'd like to suggest that we not accept a lot of the oppressive circumstances that we see going on today, that we need to study the mentality of the Maroons. How were they able to overthrow the yoke of oppression? How were they able to establish their own communities and even countries and establish and maintain their sovereignty? These are the things that I want us to think about, because you can get so caught up in seeking equity that you give up the notion of achieving sovereignty. And sovereignty is complete self-sufficiency. But I'll give a more comprehensive definition of sovereignty a little bit later.
One thing we have to admit is our ancestors were incredible human beings. Our ancestors were incredible human beings. To experience the conditions that they experienced, to experience the torture that they experienced, and still had the will to fight back. Now, we know all of them didn't, but a good enough number of them didn't for white people to create something called drapetomania. Drapetomania. You have a mental illness because you don't want to be enslaved. Our ancestors faced worse conditions than we could ever imagine. But somehow, somewhere, they still found the mind, the spirit, and the heart to fight back. So my question for this video, for us today, for us to talk about in this discussion is, What's the maroon beaten out of us over the years? Because we gone from a time to where we had a number of people who are willing to fight back. Now we're in a time where we have a number of people who talk about fighting back, but how many of us really have the heart, the mind, and the soul to fight back? I want to start with you, PC. What's the maroon? You already know. What's the maroon beaten out of us? Why don't we fight? And of course, all fighting back isn't physical confrontation. But if it has to go there, it got to go there. But why don't we fight back today?
Well, I'm answer the first part of your question. Yeah, the maroon was beaten out of us. Uh, and I'll be honest with you. Well, I'm gonna put it like this: the maroon was beaten out of those who weren't maroons back then. So when we think about the uprisings, we think about slave revolts. The majority of the plantations didn't take part in those fights. Those were small bands of brothers and sisters who
Hmm.
got just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Now, uh, when I think about what they did, they were willing to forsake all of this and live on the land. They were able to go into places that they knew the white man couldn't follow. They were able to, um, they lived a hard living, but they were able to dig deep down to their roots, and therefore they were able to, um, you know, sacrifice, but to make sure they sacrificed for the sake of their nation. We don't have a lot of that today. Um, Most of the people who you see out there, they have no intention on really taking on our open enemy. So they talk a good game. Some of them slide into the game of politics. Some of them slide to the game of scholarship. Very few are willing to do the grassroots work necessary to liberate a people that's under this type of oppression. Um, in some way, shape, or form, the majority of Black people want to become part of this union, part of this nation. They want to assimilate, and many have. And their biggest issue is that they have their assimilation, their attempts to assimilate has not been accepted. So I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
All right. Patrick, same question. What's the
Same
maroon fight?
answer.
Was the maroon beaten out of us? Why don't we
Um,
fight back?
so I agree with everything PC just said. I want to take a detour real quick. Because I want to talk about this is something that's been coming up a lot lately, and this bit is a perfect segue into it. Just a brief detour. Um, Herbert was a white guy, and the guy that wrote the book that was being referenced in the
Yeah,
video that was played.
by Dr. Chike Akua. Yeah, this is a video
Hmm.
about Dr. Chike Akua is referencing Herbert, the white guy.
Right. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because nowadays it's become popular and acceptable for people in all black spaces or pro black spaces to reject information from white people as if white people don't have anything to contribute to the discussion. And the fact of the matter is, without white people, there would be no discussion. And that's literally and figuratively. A lot of the work that our great ancestors and great scholars and master teachers, the John Henrik Clarks and the Dr. Benz, and a lot of their work is based off material written by white scholars, Chancellor Williams and blah blah blah. So I want to point that out because I go back to again the situation that Professor Carl was in. I think I was more traumatized by that than PC was because I keep bringing it up. Um, the situation that Professor Carl was in, where he was trying to talk about the rise of the feminist movement, and he played the video by the white ladies, and they fucking lambasted him. Um,
Hmm.
White people do have a role to play in these conversations, insofar as the information that they bring to the table. It's our job to interpret the information differently than maybe it was intended to be interpreted, which is what Chancellor Williams and a lot of those scholars did. But that's one thing. And I wanted to make that point because I'm hearing that argument more and more and more. We don't need to be reading anything from white people. We need to stick to our scholars. No, you need to read something from everybody.
Well, Dr. John Henry Clark said, study any and everything you can get your hands on, so you can get as many points of views and as many vantage points of the information as possible. A lot of our scholars have said that.
And I'm just bringing it up again because, like I said, that point has been brought up a lot over the last, I say, 2 or 3 years. And I don't see anybody really pushing back on that narrative. If anything, the Black community seems to be embracing that narrative, and that is a very damaging narrative to embrace. The second thing is the direct answer to your question is I think that there are no, the Maroon was beaten out of us, so we'll say that. But I agree with PC. The Maroon wasn't beaten out of us from the perspective of people just don't want to fight. One of the things we got to accept is that the masses of Black people have always been looking for the easy way to life.
Right.
Like PC said, there's always been a small groups of people here or there pushing back. But in mass, one of the reasons we were selected for slavery, if you listen to the journals of various white journal explorers and whatnot, is that Black people had a propensity to accept their lot in life that was driven by their spiritual beliefs. They knew that a good chunk of us would accept our position. And that's why we were so successful being enslaved, more successful than all of the other people they tried to enslave that ended up going extinct.
Right.
And I think that's a truth that we have to come to grips with, is that fundamentally we did accept a lot of things, and we still do. And that's part of the work that has to be done. So I think for those small groups of people that were willing to fight back and do this and that and the third, they accepted a lot of things too. And they're the ones that I think were really beating up the descendants of those people who, when you see them now, they're happy with their small corner of the pie. Even though it's still, for the most part, they've still assimilated in a lot of regards compared to what their ancestors did. But they hold their ancestors up as proud stories of something that they come from. Yeah, you come from it. You didn't do it.
Yeah.
So even in that, there's been kind of a lie that's been perpetuated about the greatness of me based off work done by those who had sex and produced me. So I think there's a lot to get into in this discussion.
Well, yeah, because I was scrolling through YouTube and I found this is just a clip of a whole video where Dr. Chike Akua is talking about what he called it, the Maroon mentality, and I picked it because we do a lot of, we said this before and I said it again, we do a lot of talking these days. Of course, I've always said Black people's superpower, if we were superheroes, our superpower would be talking jump. You know, we would be the Hawkeye of the Avengers.
You jive turkey.
You know what I'm saying? And I said jive turkey, why you ain't fall? Because you just talking, right? And so, you know, you said, you hit on something, Pat, something that I was going to bring up is we do continuously live off of the things that our ancestors have done, and we hold them up proudly, and we talk about them as if we've done them. We've gotten real comfortable with our place in America. Are there those who still fight back in various ways in the best way they can? Yes. We're not talking about those people. Matter of fact, we want to give a salute and a shout out to everybody who's actually doing something, some kind of resistance in the best way that they can. We're giving those people shouts out. But the problem is those people's fighting back has already been compromised before they were born because of the assimilation and the compromisation the compromising rather that we have with white America. You can't defeat that which you cooperate with. Like we talked about last week, like there's no example for what we're trying to do in the manner and what we're trying to do in the positions to people who've been in positions that we've been in. So we're doing something, we're attempting to do something that hasn't been done. But there's still a lot that we can learn from our ancestors. Like the San Basilio di Palenque. How did they, because how were they able to build that and maintain it for so many years? I think we know about the rebellions, but do we really understand the rebellions? Do we really study the rebellions? Do we really get into the total mindset and the tactics and the strategies and the things that they needed to do? Because first of all, let's just be real. If all the power went out today, a lot of us would be in trouble. A lot of us would be in trouble because we don't have basic survival skills. So not having basic survival skills limits us in being able to fight back in a way because we're so dependent upon the same people that we're going to be fighting against. See, one thing that helped them was the self-sufficiency, them being able to live off of the land, them being able to okay, we're going to run away from these plantations and we're going to hunt, we're going to fish, and we're going to plant things, we're going to pick the things from the trees. We know the terrain. We know the plants. We understand our surrounding. We so far behind, and we so far our knowledge base is so far off. It's crazy. Like, what if the power go out today? We in trouble. So how do you fight back? Because we talk a lot. We don't like white supremacy, but white supremacy isn't just going to stop because we don't like it. White supremacy isn't going to stop because we say it should stop. White supremacy isn't going to stop because it hurts our feelings. So either white people are going to have to choose to not continue the system of white supremacy, or we're going to have to fight back.
Mhm.
But the problem is trying to fight back. We don't have the basic things that we need from the beginning. The mindset, the spirit, the heart.
I think, well, and I'll say this, one of the things I disagree with from the video is that sovereign communities were created. I believe there were a lot of self-sufficient communities created. There weren't any sovereign communities created. Sovereignty is something that Black people in America, anyways, we've never come close to sniffing that out. And there are reasons for that, which I don't know that this is the show for that, but so I disagree with him on that. But we did create self-sufficient communities, and this is the interesting thing. Even with that, now what we consider self-sufficient nowadays, like the skills required to get to self-sufficiency nowadays, are different than what was required to get to self-sufficiency then.
Right.
So, like the basics of it is the same: food, water, shelter. That's the same.
Right.
But how do you get food, water, and shelter? That's kind of changed over the decades. And then you look at the fact that most Black people do live in the concrete jungle, not a wooden one. So even to that, you gotta maneuver different, because I was in a survival skills course here in Charlotte not too long ago. The most interesting thing, right? They were teaching people how to survive in the woods, in a set of woods that had a set of trees and waters and other things that are not within 100 miles of Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
What are you teaching survival? Like, what kind of survival skills are these? So we're not even having those discussions where we're teaching people about the relevant resources in their areas. What type of trees
Right.
grow in your area? What type of insects? What type of soil do you have? What can you grow in that soil? Not all soil can grow stuff. You know what I'm saying? How do you maintain the soil where you're at? How far do you need to dig to get into the underground waterways where you can create a well from the aquifers? Those types of things, right? Like, and that's going to vary from location to location. So even when we're talking about self-sufficiency, we're not talking about it on a level where people that are listening really understand what that means in their area, because PC could be a survival guru up there in the Pennsylvania area, and he could probably, survive anywhere in that state. But you move him down to Florida, and he got 2 weeks before he asked out. It's a different land.
Oh yeah, you gonna get chlamydia.
so I think we gotta have those discussions on that level too. Like, you need to, when you're talking about up and relocating, right? Like, how do you go into another area? Like, understanding what's native to that area, what's invasive in that area, blah blah blah. But so, and then even when we get back to the Maroon colonies, I think, again, I go back to one of the challenges with all of this, understanding the Maroon nature of it all, is that there aren't enough critical thinkers. Black people will look at, say, what happened with the movement in 1985, and they'll try to replicate that exactly to the letter, not realizing
Right.
that it's
Well,
2023. It's not the same. Or they'll look at what the Gullah Geechees did, and they'll try to replicate that exactly to the letter,
well,
and then wonder why it
yeah.
ain't moving.
Well, so we hear people a lot talking about recreating Black Wall Street. So
Yeah.
there's a video out floating around through the internet of Professor James Small. And Professor James Small is talking about after Black Wall Street, after Tulsa was rebuilt. And both of you mentioned this on the show before, but I'm gonna mention it again. And he talks about how after Tulsa was rebuilt, what really destroyed Black Wall Street and to where it was no more was integration or assimilation into white people. Right. And so we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that aspect because that has to be talked about. Even like shows ago when you guys were talking about the Haitian Revolution, what happened after the fighting? Like, for Haiti to be in the position that it's in now, well, what happened to Haiti for Haiti to be in the position that it's in now after such a massive victory? And so, even because this, for me, this video is more so for us than for the people, more so for us, because we talk about nation building a lot, but what really goes into nation building? What really has to happen on a real life level for us to actually nation build and stop talking about it, but actually get to the steps of real nation building to put stuff in progress? What has to happen? Because we talk about it, but once again, if the power goes out, will that halt all of our nation building?
Oh, hell yeah. If the power
Yeah.
goes out, the first thing we have to worry about is the Negroes that's in proximity to us. Because now you're talking about the savage nature of survival. And they're not going to go outside of our community. They've been very well versed in who they can actually victimize and who they will, become criminals about real quick. That understanding is already there. A few things, man, when y'all were talking, and I like to jot a few notes.
There you
And
go.
and to go back to what you was talking about, Pat, in terms of how we address these issues, we're delusional in terms of what this would look like. A lot of us have this thing where we sort of become nostalgic about the great glorious past. Sometimes, and basically, we embellish on the things that actually happen in regards to the things in the past. So we start talking about all these rebellions. Yeah, the number looks good, 250 rebellions, 250 revolts. That looks good. But if it's 3 people over here and 6 people over there, those numbers don't add up. One of the things that I think that really uh, that makes it where we don't function well is we don't have the mindset to take our enemies out. We have been too benevolent in that faction. This is why we can win a battle here, a battle there, but at the same time, we move on like they forget. They have the minds of colonizers and conquerors. So once you fight them off, that's not it. It's not over. It's like water receding from the beach. Another wave is coming. And we are not ready for that type of fight. And that's the truth of it all. We want to do just enough to hopefully make them reconsider their advances. They don't have any problem with that. When you hear these white supremacists talking, even to this day, their whole goal and mindset is domination. They don't care about how it happens. They don't play by these rules. And this is what I mean by sometimes we hide from things and we try to become intellectual about it. Because you'll hear people say, well, morally, I did the right thing. No, you didn't. Morally speaking, your first job should be about securing the future of your people. So under that perspective, you do whatever is necessary. You do whatever you have to do in order to win. And if that means making sure that there's no second and third generational wave to come for you, then that's what you do. Because listen, we've had people who fought. The Seminoles were Maroon. They were Africans who escaped, and they escaped to Florida, and they started raiding plantations. They actually were the precursor to the Civil War, but we didn't keep it going. You know what I'm saying? It stopped. Sovereignty would have been saying, listen, this state of Florida belongs to us. And then we changed the name or whatever. And that would have
And it's
been a
recognized.
beacon. Yeah, right. There would have been treaty signed. Not to say white folk ever, keep their word. Because they've broken damn near every treaty they've made with anybody on this land. But that's part of the problem. Another part of the problem, something you brought up, John. We live in a first world country. It's real hard to get people hungry enough to have liberation when they think they have to give up their cable TV. It's a basketball game on somewhere in America. We got to see. It's a football game we got to get to. There's a lot of leisure that this first world country offers us that we can't let go of. A lot of comforts. That whole idea of running water and the whole idea of being able to flush your toilet and the water, and it goes somewhere, and sewage drain and the infrastructure that's created. We've gotten really comfortable with it. We get out there, and you saw, like many people may have seen the situation that happened. I believe it was the House of Congress over in Tennessee, the State House, where you had 2 young brothers protesting, and I'm not going to get into the
Yeah, they got
particulars in
dismissed
it.
from the Congress or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going
Yeah.
to speak. Yeah, I'm not going to get too indignant with that situation because there's a lot to be unpacked with that alone. But that's what we think is power: standing up in their house and raising our voices. And the thing is, we've gotten to the point where we don't care about tangible results. We just want to be heard. Is it appealing to the affections of those who are heartless is going to ever change our situation and circumstance? One of the things that I just and this is the last part I'm gonna make before I pass the mic. But we love our legends. We love the nostalgic part of that. But just understand something. When Harriet was going back and forth to those plantations, there was a lot of people she left behind because they were not willing. She actually had to have a gun on her for those who actually got halfway and wanted to go back. So the notion and the concept or the mindset that black people were fighting against this, uh, I think is a good part. Is good revisionist history. But we're not paying attention to the fact that they actually made slaves. They had slave making plantations in the Caribbean, in which they actually created it. And that's how they understood that there are segments of the African population that will not fight back, that will endure. And they would rather endure than, uh, delete themselves or, delete themselves through fighting back. And I land my plane with that.
Well, yeah, that's a part of the refinement of white supremacy over time for it to be maintained. Because I think about, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the modern day lynchings that have happened. Dr. King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, black people who stood up against white supremacy who were executed for it. I think that did a lot to the psyche of the modern day black person. Also, in addition to that, how do you tell a black person that just made $300,000 last year that we need the nation build?
You don't.
That last part. I mean, let's go back to what you said about the first part about the within the last 70 years, the lynchings that took place. Those people, those brothers you mentioned, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and so forth and so on, they were all considered troublemakers by the vast majority of black community. There were times when Malcolm would be interviewed and somebody would come right after him on an interview and say, I don't believe in anything that these activists and leaders are saying on our behalf. And then Malcolm would still be standing right next to him when he says these things. I don't have any problem with the white man. My biggest problem is with these troublemaking Negroes over here that's rabble rousing all up throughout the street and causing our problems. We don't have any problems in our community. And like I said, there's little interviews where Malcolm had to get back on the mic and say, and to Malcolm's credit, he didn't even attack the brother that said these things. He went after the journalist for playing that deceptive game of divide and conquer. But truth be told, tricky camera shots and trick photography would make you think the room was fuller than it was. But the majority of people who looked at them, they looked at them as troublemakers and so forth, and they didn't want anything to do with them because they were terrified of the wrath of white folk. As we put together a curriculum, and part of that curriculum, we talked about the bloody summer of 1919. Was it 1917, 1919? I believe 1919. Mm-hmm. And the reign of terror that took place in black communities all throughout the country. White folk don't have a problem with reminding us about how much bloodshed they can unleash on us. And, like I said before with Charles Manson, they've understood for a long time that black people respond to fear with 3 times, the emotion that white folk do. So when they understand that if they put that fear in us, it's going to, like it goes back to the whole plantation stand where the mother would beat her son within an inch of his life. And she would always tell him, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Because she thought that if I emasculate him, then he won't be a threat. And therefore, this plantation master won't kill him. This plantation hand won't kill him. So a lot of this stuff goes back, the psyche of within us for a long time. Being inside the house before dark. We didn't even know why we had to be in the house when the street lights came on. we just, many of us recently learned about what sundown towns was. You know what I'm saying? That reign of terror that they've inflicted in black people has had an effect, a dramatized effect, to which even those to this day who want to be seen as being unapologetic and being unafraid know that there's only but so far they'll go, because they know that somebody will get away with deleting us and there's nothing that will be done about it. We understand the world we live in. And I think that's where, if you talk about a maroon mentality, those other maroons, they were able to create situations. And we're not just talking about in the Americas, but even in the Caribbean, the so-called dreadheads of Jamaica. They were able to create situations where they were able to isolate themselves and
And up in
hide
them
for
Blue
the most part,
Mountains.
right, from from the Europeans. And they knew that because of things like malaria and things of that nature, they can only come but so far inside before they dealt with them. But just like Patrick said, there was still no liberation. There was an agreement that was made that will allow you to live here. But even in Jamaica, their dollar is what, the British pound? So it just goes to show that even in establishing boundaries, there still was some consolidations that those black people had to do in order to just maintain their peace, if we're going to call it that.
Well, well, yes. Like we have to. If you build it, you must protect it. We have to understand what's going on. I believe the majority of us, especially a lot of us who talk about nation building and fighting white supremacy, have never taken the time to study the behavior of the white supremacists. You see the events and things that happen, but they haven't taken the time to study the mentality of the white supremacists. Like you said, they react and respond to danger differently than us. They are drawn to danger and deleting people differently than us. A lot of them they relish in that stuff a lot more than we do. They are more apt to kill. They'll kill themselves, but they'll click up and kill other people. Us, we just focus on ourselves. But also looking at what happened to Assad Shakur, looking at what happened to Mumia Abu Jamal, looking what happened to a lot of the political prisoners. I believe a lot of us are afraid of the consequences.
Oh, hell yeah.
And being compromised because your survival or a good number of or a good percentage of your survival is dependent upon the system of white supremacy. Because and it's partly our fault for continuing it, but for the generations before us, this is the situation that they gave us. We were still they gave us a world. We came up in a world where black people had been assimilated into white America. So black people pretty much waved a white flag. Because think about it, we think fighting back is marching. We think we've classified fighting back as the stuff Jesse Jackson does and Al Sharpton does, and fighting back and having marches. Because look, I'm driving home today, and this not even black people. This is just how Americans have been conditioned into fighting back, and we know if white America has the flu, Black America got gonorrhea or whatever. It's bad for us, right? So if liberal white, the Florida Capitol building, somebody's always in front of the Capitol building protesting something that people gonna forget about by the end of the day. And they really believe that they're fighting. We do the same thing. Let something happen. Let the news sensationalize something tomorrow. They're going to go out and march and speak and do all those things. We're fighting back. Well, if we're really fighting back, why we keep having the same occurrences and the same outcomes and the same instances? Because the real fighting back has been beaten out of us.
I think that goes into something else we talk about a lot, and we've talked about it in this conversation, which is the lack of studying. people think marchers are something that they're not because they haven't studied what marches are useful for. They haven't bothered to look into why people were, getting so much walking in back then. You know what I'm saying? Like there was a reason behind it. It was a part
Bluetooth
of a larger.
disconnected.
It was a part of a larger strategy at play. Now we can agree or disagree with the larger strategy, but if we're going to talk about marches and whatnot, we also have to acknowledge that they were a part of a larger strategy. Um, what's happened nowadays
especially the
is
bus
that
boycott.
what happened nowadays is we've forgotten that these things were a part of a larger strategy, and we've started thinking that they were the strategy. The tactics have become the plan, and that's not the way this shit is supposed
Yes.
to work. Um,
Yes.
and you really see it. There's a definitive date for when that took root, and this is one of the reasons why because I'm about to go on another detour, but this is another reason why I don't like the narrative that's constantly pushed that children drive the movement. Children might be the energy behind the movement, but if children are driving the movement, well, that explains why we're driving in circles because they don't know where they're going because they don't know shit.
But
So
I
they just
think,
keep making the same left turn.
but I think that statement is true though, because they are driving the movement while the older ones are sitting on the sideline just talking.
Well, I agree, but here's what I'm getting at. The older people encourage the younger people to drive the movement, and they encourage the younger people to figure it out and make up their own minds. The 1960s, like the part of the 1960s that we love to celebrate, was actually the downfall of 40 years of work that came before it. It was the end, the brick wall ending of 40 years of real black building. The
Yeah. And we
1960s civil rights bills that we love to champion, that the teenagers told their elders, their parents, their grandparents, we tired of doing it y'all way, we gonna do it our way, and we celebrate them for it nowadays. It was the young people basically blowing up decades and decades and decades of building and work by the older generations that understood that we need to build our own,
yes.
because the younger people wanted to party with their white friends and go to school with their white friend, and the older generations aren't off the hook. They allowed those younger people to grow up in that type of ignorance. So
Yeah.
they grew up believing the lies and the stories of their white friends, and you still see it nowadays where you see people on social media posting pictures of a black kid and a white kid hugging, talking about slavery or racism is taught. No shit, Sherlock. Guess what? In fucking 1742, white kids was also hugging black kids when they was 5, 6, 7 years old. You're not showing us nothing new. But
What
because there's no scholarship happening and
the
nobody's
ignorance.
we're pushing back on those narratives, we just got a streamline of it. Well, now even the bulk of our elders are ignorant. So now we got to go back and learn shit from people. Look, we so far behind. We should be building. We should have spent the last 100 years, right, building off the backs of the intellectual movement, the Negro intellectual boom of the 1920s. We should have spent the last 100 years developing those thoughts, those ideas, and those processes. Instead, we got to go back and relearn them all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
We're starting. We want, like we talked about last week. Why does every new generation got to get it out the goddamn mud? Because that's the term we like to use, right? Every generation has to start over from ground zero. I mean, because like you're saying, that the groundwork was already laid out. We had plenty scholars, plenty people who've done amazing things. Go check out their stories here on this channel. Check out the stories here on this channel, right? But if I'm 18, when I was 18, I didn't know none of this. That's a problem. That's a problem that I'm 18 years old, graduating high school, about to go to an HBCU, and I don't learn this. And then when I get to the HBCU, I learned some of it, but most of it I learned on my own. Now, I will say my HBCU path was a lot different, but guess what? Most people that I know that went to HBCU, they ain't learn none of this stuff. They ain't learn none of this stuff. So we put ourselves in the compromising position because on one hand we like to complain about white supremacy. We don't like white supremacy. We want white supremacy to end, but on the other hand, we're not willing to do the actual real work that it takes. It's the same thing as saying, I want six pack, I want a six pack of abs, I want a six pack of abs, but you're not willing to eat and work out. It's not gonna happen. You can't manifest freedom. Matter of fact, stop using black people from this point on. Do not use the word manifest ever again if your ass ain't willing to get up and put in some work.
Yeah, well,
My
you
bad,
know,
PC.
no, that's all good. It's funny, right? Because I mean, what you both said made a lot of sense. And you know, I got nephews, and when I talk to my nephews, one of the first things they would say to me, "This isn't like when you grew up. It's different now. Racism doesn't, you know, the young white folk don't move like that no more." And I'm like, your buddies, so y'all all in college. It's all good because you're in an environment where it sort of supports you guys just being buddies, you guys being friends. But the second you get out of college and it's a race to resources, a race to this, that, and the other, then you're going to truly understand that they get it and they're perfectly functional. They're perfectly fine with you, with your black behind, thinking that, oh, racism is a feeling, racism is an expression, this, that, and the other, without understanding systemic parts of it and the history of it. And therefore, when they get out of it, they will never introduce you to their network. They will never introduce you to the boardroom. They will never introduce you to the executive. They will never pull you in because they understand that, you know, all that buddy buddy stuff is cool when we were partying and hanging out. And when I feel like slumming it, I know I can always come down your way. But I can't pull you up here into these circles where I get it, but I get it. And the fact that we try so hard to forget our history because we're terrified of saying it. It's like one time I was in the airport and I had a shirt on, and it, you know, it was a cultural shirt. And a sister whispered to me, "I like that shirt." And I'm like, "Thank you very much."
Bruh, we are scared. I'm saying we talked about this, folks. I'm gonna say it again. We are afraid to say white people. It could be a room full of black people. We're afraid to say white. They be like, these people or them folk. White, you mean white people? That's me. You mean white people.
Bro, I done told both y'all the story of me being alone in the dentist's office when I first got here to Charlotte. It was the eye exam, and the lady or the black person closing the door to whisper something black to me. Like, we're already in here alone. What you whispering for? And you closed the door. But I think one of the things that we got to understand, and this is one of the things I tell young people when they tell me times is different. Black people have been saying that since time started. Like every generation of kids say that things are different. Every generation, like you ain't even saying nothing new by saying that.
Right.
So, and the other point I like to make to him is, look, this shit is gonna end one or two ways. It's not gonna stay like this forever. The reason why it seems like white people are becoming more tolerant is because black people are becoming more white. And that's what we gotta deal with.
But that's the thing, though. That's the trick. White people aren't more tolerant. This the refinement of the system. This shit is on autopilot. We're doing it for them. Why?
Right.
Why do I have to? Why does Edgar and Buford and Clifford and Wellington?
Billy Bob. Don't get Billy Bob.
Why do they have? They don't have to go put on their clan stuff. Ty Aquarius and them gonna do it for them. Ty somewhere right now, Tyquarius now riding on Dontarius now.
Look.
And they're gonna make a drill rap about it later on.
Yeah, look. White ladies don't have to accuse black men of rape anymore.
Black
Black
women
women
doing
do
it.
it for it. And black men
Yeah.
don't have to accuse white
Great,
men don't have to
great,
accuse black
great,
women of being
great.
yeah. Black women, black men don't, white men don't have to accuse black women of being hoes no more. Black men do it for them. Like, and
No,
then
no,
it's
no.
gotta be what?
You don't. You black look. Black women don't have to be accused of being hoes no more because they showing their own coochie hoes on the internet
What?
and in
And
real
that's
life.
well, that was gonna be the next point because it's like let's not even get started on what we do to each other in terms
I,
of gender to gender, and
I
what
was
we
just
express to the larger narrative in terms of what we put out there in terms of our cultural output.
black women have brought into the sexual revolution shit.
Hands
And
down.
like Tuesday, I'm at the facility that I go to, the drug rehab facility that I go to, and teach the classes. And one of the staffer people, she like a little college chick, and we're talking about perception, how people perceive people, and then we got on talking, and it's a group full of women. I'm the only man, and we got into talking about how women dress. And it's some older women in there who got some sense of like, yeah, well, you got to be careful how you dress because people are going to perceive you a specific way. And the black girl was like, well, and we're talking about, if you dress like a hoe and you look like a hoe, people gonna treat you like a hoe. I mean, that's just what it is. And the black girl was like, I don't think that's right, but it's not about whether you think that's right. But and I got her. I was like, so you mean to tell me if if you see me in the streets, I walk up to you, I look like a bum, I smell like a bum, and I'm talking like a bum, you're not gonna think I'm a bum? You gonna think I'm a millionaire? Well, no, you're right. I know I'm right. Perception matters.
Yeah.
You can't. So black women have brought into the notion so much, and then ran with the idea that perception doesn't matter. I define myself, and everybody else has to go through the definition that I give myself. Okay, well that's why the world is looking at black women like they hoes, and the world looking at black men like they losers.
Yeah. And we do a real good job of reinforcing those things. Like
Of
you said
Mhm.
course,
before, we're delusional, emotionally damaged, traumatized, whatever you want to call it. But we don't, and I hate using this term, but we become our own worst enemy
we have
because,
use it,
yeah,
tell the
I mean,
truth.
we become our own worst enemy because we're not, like Pat said, we should have been building on this a long time ago. I mean, I was just thinking earlier, like all these black millionaires we have, but we don't have black owned credit unions, and the fact that you can name black banks on one hand throughout the country is a disgrace. You know, we live in a place where leisure matters more than freedom, and we would rather be slaves to fashion than, I don't even want to say rebel. I want to say than revolt against what's destroying us. We've embraced it and we've co-signed it, and whatever we feel makes us more comfortable to white folk, as long as we can have being proxy to them, we'll even do their bidding. Um, and it's crazy because I hear a lot of people, right, especially the people talk about the fall of the American dollar and how happy they'll be. I'm like, if the American dollar falls, what the fuck are you gonna do? Because you
Man,
spend American dollars, you use
man,
American
look,
dollars. I don't give a fuck what you say. Sorry about the language. I don't care what you say. American dollars is how you eat, is how you sleep, is how you keep your house warm.
bruh, bruh. All right, let's put something in perspective. Look, a super PAC called BRICS:
Hmm.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That super PAC had to be put together to even match the US dollar, to even match what the US is producing, the economy. All those countries had to be put together just to match that, to come close to matching that. If the
Yeah,
US dollar falls, that's going to have huge implications on the world's economy.
Yeah.
Are other groups still trying to do their thing? Yes, but they have to be 100% independent of America. They can't use America for nothing. And a lot of these countries are not in that same place. The American dollar ain't going nowhere no time soon. And if the only way the American dollar goes somewhere if the feds find a way to regulate something else and use something else, but it's still gonna be American USD.
Well, here's the thing about that though, and here's what keeps the American dollar relevant. The American dollar is relevant because it's the petrodollar. But Saudi Arabia is agreeing to work with the BRICS nation. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen as soon or whatever. But nobody expected the pandemic to happen either. And what are we doing for a rainy day? So sharing the downfall of a country that you need to, like you said earlier, like we were saying earlier, there's not really been a liberation movement. There's not been a nation building movement. The closest we've come to a nation building movement is the Nation of Islam. And last I checked, the Nation of Islam does a lot of business with America. So, I'm not trying to piss off no NOI folk, man. I got a
Man,
lot of
look,
respect for y'all.
if you didn't get mad, if you didn't get mad when we was talking about other stuff, don't get mad when it come to you. Don't be that person.
Yeah. You know
Well,
how fickle Negroes are. So.
Don't be that
I
person.
think it's
Don't do that.
and I think economics is economics is a great conversation to start with in terms of understanding resources, because economics is about the management of resources. And we have to figure out how to acquire resources, accumulate resources, protect and manage resources without the tools that we have at our disposal now. And one of those tools is electricity and computerized components and stuff like that. So when we start talking about the US dollar, I think there are two things propping the US dollar up. And I agree with what both of you guys said. I think one of them is definitely the petrodollar. The other one is the US military. And everything is so
Right.
tied in together.
Right.
Everything is so
Try it.
well connected.
You're gonna have to go to war for this.
Yeah, like because
Well, that's what
economically,
happened with Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. So yeah, you're right. My bad, Pat.
I mean, no, you good. Systemically speaking, the US dollar has been the world's major currency for what, like 3 or 4 times longer than any other currency in the history of human civilization. So we done held on pretty long, and I think that drives a lot of the talk about it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But I mean, Jesus has been coming for 2,000 years, so you can't just keep basing things off of people saying it's coming. But at the end of the day, even if it does come, we've been saying this for a while. I don't understand why people on the ground floor of a building are cheering on the collapse of that building. What do you think is going to happen to you on the first floor when that building falls? What
If
are you
America,
expecting?
but that's the sensationalizing that black people does of of America, as far as the negative things that happen to America, because this is the by proxy siding with the enemies of America. Fool, they enemies of you too. They see you as the
Right.
same thing. Look.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we make the jokes, hey, if anything pop off, hey, we black folk, we not with them. They don't give a damn about that. They see us all the same. To them, we
Well,
are American. They don't give a damn that we black.
what
No,
even
they
to
don't.
that, that's been showcased. How many of those other countries have sent troops to America to stop Americans from to stop the American government from brutalizing black people?
Then
Like
black
that,
people just get cased up in Mexico.
right? Black people are getting cased up everywhere.
Yeah.
Like everywhere, like in even in black countries, black Americans are getting cased up. So
Right.
like we go back to Dr. John Henrik Clark. You have no allies. You want a friend, look in the mirror. But the problem is we don't like looking in the mirror because we don't like what we see because it's not white enough. And that's I think the core of all of this. When we look at, that's why I love saying that white people are not becoming more tolerant, black people are becoming more white. when black people look at other black people, we see the same thing that white people see when they look at us.
Mm-hmm.
Black companies that gain the ability to make a change in their community, the very first thing they do is move out of their community.
Yep.
Like when a black person gains resources and status and wealth, he doesn't go into the impoverished parts of the black community and try to make a difference. And I'm not saying I blame him or I'm critical of him for it. I'm saying it's a sign of the mentality. The very first thing that Negro does is move into the white neighborhood where he thinks his stuff is safer, and his stuff may be safer, but his life is at risk.
Hey,
Well, I got
So
the
I
black
got
of the
I got the cure for you all, man. It's this jar clear. You rub this on, you become as white as you feel like me.
hey man,
I'm
the
sorry.
blacker the bear, the deeper the trauma. I just put a video out the other day. We behave like our oppressors. The blacker the bear, the deeper the trauma. The thumbnail is a black man putting on a white mask. We've learned how to behave and operate and exist like white folk. That's who we have assimilated into. But we have a
Mm-hmm.
nerve to have a problem with white supremacy. Once again, you because I'm saying two things. I'm saying the black people, like once again, if the black person who made $300,000 last year, life is good for them. They got no complaints. They're you don't even worry about them. They making black people, black folk who making money and they stuff not being messed with, they're not, you can't even count on them. You can't even count on them. And then you got the other ones who not making money, who are complaining about white supremacy, but trying to get on and be where the other people who not complaining. They're trying to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's trying to build, nobody's trying to do practical things to make sure that we have what we need to get from up under this, to build our own, to challenge anything, to be respected, because it's all about, I just want them to leave me alone so we can be comfortable, so I can make my money and be straight, me and my family. We get it. That's where we are now. We just all trying to get it. Look, man, I'm telling people off top, if you're gonna mess with me, my ultimate goal is to help my community. Any organization, whatever I'm part of, at the end of the day, my goal is to help my community. At the end of the day. So you either gonna rock with me or you ain't.
You know, I think though, I think you both made great points. I think one of the points that Pat you just made though, we hate each other, so we hate ourselves so
Of
much.
course.
I mean, and it's at this part it's pathological. You know, when a black man buys a gun, he ain't thinking about killing nobody else but a black man. And they say it in their music. Or if I gotta buy a gun to protect myself, I'm not doing it thinking that a maraud or a lynch mob is gonna pull up at my front door and burn a cross on my lawn. I'm buying it because these niggas have got to go, or I gotta protect myself from these niggas. And, and when a woman is in the mirror, she is doing whatever she can to rub off all the blemishes or cover up all the blemishes of being black. This whole idea, you know, going back to the 60s where black is beautiful, you know, nowadays, you know, is no concept. It doesn't, and it goes back to something we said earlier in the conversation. We have to consistently can teach or reteach or start out in the mud when it comes to our history of who we are. And this is why we're so far behind. And when I say so far behind, I'm not talking about like in the whole concept of wealth gap, this, that, and the other. No, that's still talking about those are the semantics that keep us in the loop in terms of how we've integrated or assimilated into American society. I'm talking about behind where I go into a black city, everybody, when you look downtown at all those tall buildings, none of them are owned by black people. When I go
Nope.
into a
Nope.
conference, they're gonna meet with black people. I gotta stay at a white hotel or resort because we don't have
Yep.
places where we can um, congregate and black people actually benefit off of it. When we go to the Million Man March, when I went to the Million Man March in 1996, we were talking about not spending any money. But then I read a news article about how it was a blockbuster day for bus companies. that brought people into Washington, D.C. that day. Well, black people didn't own any of those bus companies. We had one black bus company in Philadelphia, and it went solvent because nobody would buy it. There's a black city right outside of Philadelphia right now that is in the process of losing their town. You know, because with it being dissolved back into the state, we function on a remedial level when it comes to building, nation building. Rugged individualism was sold as an American concept, but black people are the only ones who bought it.
Pull
Every
yourself up
other,
by your bootstraps.
everybody else works together, builds together. They understand how living together. We don't even eat dinner together no more. The TV, the tablet, the cell phone, everybody's off in their rooms. This, that, and that. We don't even have conversations about building families no more. To the point now, when you ask a person what's a family in the black community, it's a woman and her children. Where we have
We
people
don't
who
even.
grow up, right, like a one night stand determines whether or not I'm gonna be a father or not.
The
Not
F
a
word.
conversation, not no family planning, not talking about futures, not talking about moving past the emotional uh, accolades of being in love, but what does this union mean and how will it build a legacy? We don't think in
Well,
mature fashions like that.
well, like you said, we're not even our own allies. We can't rely on enough of each other to be our own allies. I was having a conversation with some college students last week on FAMU campus. Some of the students that was doing some of the community work with us. And the little girl can't be no older than 20, 21. So angry about so she's so angry at men. She was taught all the negativity about men, all the negativity about relationships, all negativity things. She's ready. How you 21 and ready to give up on relationship? You ain't never had real relationship yet. Her thing was, I don't want to get with a man who's going to lie to me and cheat on me and then leave me after 5 years. Well, where did you get this specific thought from? Right. But we've bought into it. Yeah. The women have brought into those narratives and the men have brought into the fucked up behavior. And some men have brought it to the narratives, but more so the men have brought it to the fucked up behavior. All right. So once again, all part of the plot, all part of the plan, all part of the maintenance. If we're
I
fighting
think
against each other, guess just want to say this. If we're fighting against each other, guess who we're not fighting against?
Mhm.
Go
I
ahead, Pat.
think one of the challenges we running into as well, and I'm gonna keep harping on it because it to me is one of the roots to all of this though, is the lack of critical thinking and the desire to replicate white ideology. Even we go back to the banks, PC, you brought up a great point, and it was funny. I wrote an article on a popular website, maybe about I don't know, maybe about 7, 10 years ago now, where it was talking about the number of black banks in America. And at the time, the number of black banks in America was around about 30. Nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
we know that that number is a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot lower. But what's interesting is every time we talk about the black banks, you have these celebrities like the Killer Mikes and all of that creating black banks. And they are creating black banks and trying to get those black banks to be national banks. And y'all might know where I'm going with this because been complaining about it for years. Black people don't need national banks. We need local community banks. If there is a bank that's based out of Atlanta and you take your money from New York and create an account in that Atlanta based bank, you have not done anything for your community but transfer wealth out of it. And I think that goes into the lack of forethought that goes into everything that we do.
Who was behind that again? Who was behind that?
I believe his name was Killer Microphone, I believe. Uh so But you know, it's one of those things where people just say, "Oh yeah, we need more black banks." Yeah, well, I'm gonna go bank at that bank in Atlanta. But you live in Wisconsin. How is banking with a bank in Atlanta gonna help you and your community in Wisconsin? You know what I'm saying? So now you have this bank in Atlanta taking this money in from all over the world. I'm sorry, all over the nation. And the majority of it is being pumped back out into institutions that may or may not be black. I'm not going to comment on that because I haven't looked into it. But I do know that the majority of them are in Atlanta. Local banks fuel local economies. Community banks fuel communities. And it's on that level that we got to start thinking, right? If you open a community bank and your bank gets so big that you're now a national entity, you have two choices that are both beneficial to black community. You can start creating a chain of community banks all over the country that have a specific radius of impact, or you can start teaching other black people how to do what you did in their local communities and maybe create some competition for yourself, sure, but it'll be for the betterment of the community as a whole. But deciding that we're going to take what we doing national and try to corner the market, that is not black progressive thinking in a way that's going to help us build anything. That's white
Well,
business mentality.
right.
And I'm not saying there's nothing
But
wrong with it, but it don't help us.
it doesn't. It is something wrong with it because it doesn't work for us, and that's the problem with it. But once again, we're listening to people who the intention is there. Because I don't think as I would never say that I think Killer Mike has bad intentions. I
Oh,
just don't
absolutely.
think.
Yeah.
I just don't think like the rappers, the entertainers, the athletes. I just don't think they have all of the information and, like you say, all of the foresight because they need to be connected with the scholars and the thought leaders of the black community. All that need to be connected. Um, I believe that the intellectuals, the intellectual class, the business class, the the blue collar class, all the classes of people of black people, we need to get together and work together and support each other, have the different factions together. But the problem is we don't work together good. We don't like each other enough to work together. Or we do, but we keep buying into the narratives that we don't. Because we like each other more than we like each other more than we talk about. And we like each other better than we treat each other. But since you buy into the narratives, now we have brought into we are not exhibiting the behaviors that we have been parroting. I mean, hey, what you want to get out of that? But all in all, we ain't gonna keep beating the dead horse. But the thing is, Maroon mentality, because it all is based off of Dr. Chike Akua's video about having the Maroon mentality, about us creating the mindsets, passing down the mindsets, maintaining the mindsets for us to be self-sufficient nation builders. We named our audience the builders of tomorrow. And like I say, this video more so was for me and us so we can really get our mindsets into thinking of real practical things that we need to do to help ourselves. I hope everybody who's watching this, including us three, every day we're doing things to improve our individual lives and help to improve the lives of the people around us and make our situation better. If your today was not better than yesterday, then you tripping, you not doing your ancestors proud. That's one thing that we got to look at, the sacrifice that our ancestors did. This channel on the shoulders of giants. I'm learning by our ancestors all the time, the sacrifices that they put in. Every day you wake up, every day you put your foot on the ground, you should be striving to make that day better than the previous day. It's for not just for your ancestors, it's for everybody who's living right now and the future. We have to be better. We have our overall behavior and the way we exist has degraded over the years. We have to get better. Of course, we ain't trying to save everybody. If you claim to be in this fight, you claim to be on this road, and you're not doing what you need to do every day to get better. If you got goals that you set out there and you're not meeting your goals, you bullshit. You bullshit. Straight up. You don't have the Maroon mentality because the Maroons met their goals despite the circumstances. Remember, our ancestors met their goals despite the bullshit that white people had going on. They were some real ones. You want to talk about some real ones? They were some real ones. You want to be a real one? Get up off your ass and make today better than yesterday. Professor Carl Tone Jones, Patrick Irvin, Joseph Ward. This is Breakdown Friday. Hey, we ain't do no intro. We ain't need to. We was getting right into it, getting right to the information. This is how we do. Support. Website scrolling at the bottom of the page. FetLifeStation.com. Every Friday, right?
Every Friday, 7 p.m. Oh, it's gonna be hot.
Yes,
tonight.
Friday.
I see y'all there.
Yes, going down every Friday, 7 p.m. FetLifeStation.com. Make sure you tune in. www.paxinc.com, PACTSINC.com. Make sure you check it out. These are the three conglomerates that we have. Patrick is Pax Inc. OTSOG. Professor is Fet Life. Support. Remember the Independence Day Project as well. You can find that on my website as well. Support what we got going on. We supporting each other. We're going to keep doing what we do. We out of here. We love y'all. Love yourself enough. Out of here.